Welcome to the Immigrant Experience in America, an immigrant human library, where we amplify and humanize the experiences of immigrants in the United States and around the world. Listen in as we add another story to our immigrant human library. Friends, thank you for joining the Immigrant Experience in America, a place where we amplify and humanize the experiences of immigrants living around the world. Today we have joining you Mr. Nick Berg from Tehran. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Please correct me. Welcome, Mr. Berg.
Oh, thank you, Simone. I appreciate you having me.
Okay, it's so great to have you on the show. Can you tell us a bit about Mr. Nick Berg and what's your origin story?
Sure, absolutely. So my story is a little bit different. I come, as I call it, from two different worlds. My mother is Iranian and my father is American. But I grew up in Iran until I was about 19 years old. And then through a series of things after the revolution in Iran and all of those things, I moved to the United States. And it was a journey to get to the United States. And then once I was in the U.S., I had to learn English. I had to learn everything from scratch pretty much because it was a pretty big culture shock for me. And then going from there, my first place was U.S. Army. And joining the U.S. Army and being there for almost 11 years. And then finally transitioning to civilian life from there.
Okay, great. So I have a few snippets about your upcoming book, but it looks like you have some in print already. Tell us a bit about your book and how it ties into your life story.
Sure. So the book is called Shadows of Tehran, and it's a series of events. I call it a fictional autobiographical story. It's based on my life story, but it has some embellishes in it, and that kind of helps me to tell the story a bit more vividly than actual memoir that would be basically recounting of facts in the process. The story, it touches on emotional aspects of life, growing up in a country as a dual nationality, not fitting into either one of those countries, and being different in every aspect. And when I was growing up in Iran, everybody looked at me as the American boy. And when I came to America, everybody looked at me as the Iranian guy. So it's kind of not fitting into either one of those worlds and being kind of, as I call myself, the citizen of the earth. And just depending on which side of the rock I happen to be, that growing up down that side of the rock or living on this side of the rock. So the book is really about the story of resilience because during the time I was growing up in Iran, it was the war between Iran and Iraq, the revolution. Life completely turned upside down practically overnight after the revolution took over and the old government went out and the Islamic government took over. All the rules changed. Everything you knew how to live a life completely changed within the span of months. And then trying to live in that country and then all of the values changed. And being a half American, it was a time that they took the American hostages in the U.S. Embassy and all of that stuff. So the story starts from there and goes into becoming a rebel against the Islamic government in Iran and trying to win freedoms back, trying to win women's freedoms back. And I was young and stupid back then, thinking I can change the world. And eventually being able having to get out of Iran basically secretly because of the government finding out, and at the time the government was pretty brutal, and leaving Iran and coming to the U.S. Through a series of things. And once in the U.S., joining the U.S. Army, and I couldn't just stay put, so I had to join Special Operations. and then traveling all around the world with the army, being in the first Gulf War, being in Rwanda during the genocide, being in Sierra Leone, being in Bosnia during the conflict over there, spending a lot of time in African countries, in Middle East, as well as Europe, and trying to kind of figure out what are the right things that I needed to do and how I can help the people that were there at the time. When you think about the military, you don't really think about helping people, but it is helping people and trying to help the defenseless people of the world. But at the same time, from an immigrant perspective, I was still a foreigner in a foreign army. So it was kind of like trying to fit in, try understanding the cultural aspects of things. I'll give you a funny story. One time I was talking to somebody about Iran, and they looked at me and they said, "Well, you're pulling my leg." And I'm like, "I didn't touch your leg." And so then they had to explain to me that it's a kind of a slang that you have to understand. And I started catching up at that point.
Wow. Welcome to my world. I'm very pleased to hear you talk about your third culture person experience, which is basically what you are. You're born in one place, your parents are from two different worlds, but you're developing a culture all of your own, right? And then you come into the US and you don't fit in either of your parents' culture. And so you form something of your own. So it's a third culture that you've developed. Most people think about third culture kids, but for adults, I experience exactly what you're talking about, just not fitting in or just feeling like you belong in either place.
Right.
So I completely relate to that. So I wanted to slow down a bit. Tell us about, because interestingly, when I look at you, for me, from a Afro descendant person, I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking you look like a white male in the American perspective, right?
Right.
But here you are with this interesting story of not fitting in. Like, give us.
So I'll tell you a funny story about that is that when I first came to the United States, I landed in Detroit, and that's in the book as well. And I landed in one of those neighborhoods because I didn't have any money, didn't know anybody. But landed in one of those areas of Detroit that nobody wants to go. And in Iran, and I've been very open with you, in Iran, we don't have any African descendants in Iran. Everybody's kind of white. And so it was a complete culture shock for me and learning and really understanding the differences in races and how white and black in America is so different, and the way they look at each other and the subcultures and all of that. It was such an interesting perspective for me because I made some really, really great friends in that area of Detroit as well that are still lifelong friends, that I'm still friends with them. And I remember an incident. I was walking down the street one time and these 3 or 4 guys jump out from the corner and they're like, "What are you doing here, white boy?" And a couple other guys from the area come back and say, "He ain't white, man. Just let him go. He's fine. Don't worry about it. Just let him go." So that experience was a very unique experience for me, starting in America and learning about it.
Wow, 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 wow. That's interesting. You landed in a predominantly black neighborhood, right?
Right.
And nothing like the people, and you have no idea what you're getting yourself into.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Well, I'm happy to hear that you were able to bridge the culture and formed relationships that have lasted the test of time. That is great to hear.
Yes, it is. It's like one really, really good friend of mine. And we actually joined the army together. He's a black gentleman. We joined the army together, and we're still really, really good friends. And we went through basic training together and got stationed together, and we both got out, and we're still really, really good friends, and we still connect once in a while. And I still go back to that old neighborhood once in a while. I connect with some of the old people that I knew from over there. They're all old like me now, but It's it's still very interesting for me. That one
Right.
thing I realize is that no matter where you go in the world, what color you are, what background you got culturally, is that people are all people. They all care about taking care of their families. They all take doing the right thing, living their life, and it doesn't matter who they are, where they come from, what the background is. The basics that we're all humans and we all follow the same process.
Hmm. Beautiful, beautiful. That's my position too. I've traveled, I've experienced different cultures, connected with different people, have friends from across different backgrounds. And so, when you realize you start looking at similarities from where you come and from where they come, the way you guys do things, differences, similarities, and then you just realize that you guys just really want to enjoy this life and understand it more at the
Right.
end of the day, right? We are all really struggling just to make sense of this life and why we're here and what we're here for and all of that. Um, but beautiful, beautiful. But I want to go back a little bit to learn more about Tehran and how long you were there and what was going on during the time that you were in the country and your experience.
Sure. When I was in Tehran, first of all, is a beautiful city. It's a very modern city. A lot of people that haven't traveled to that part of the world don't understand how modern it is. And it's one of the most beautiful cities. It's on the outskirts of a volcano, actually, and it's surrounded by mountains. And one of the reasons that it's such a polluted city once in a while, and especially during the summers, is because it's in a valley and the air doesn't move. So, but it's a city of almost 10 million people. It's a very large city, very urban areas inside of the city. The northern part of the city being the better part of the town, and the southern part being a little bit more where poorer people live, kind of in that process, and everything in between the south and the north. And I grew up in Tehran as kind of growing up there. I always consider it home, no matter where I live in the world. Tehran has always have a special place for me. And the people of Iran are the most hospitable people in the world that you ever meet. They're famous for their hospitality and all of that. But at the same time, during that time, it was a very the turmoil in the city and everything else, and all of the sudden, all of your connections broke with the revolution. The people, the ideologies, the religious ideologies, and all of that kind of split people up into different groups and into different
Mm,
camps. There were people that wanted the Shah back. There were people that wanted the Islamic government to be a lot harsher than it was. There were people that were in the middle of all of it, and it's all about influences and how they grew up, and how their thought processes are. It's I always say, when you anybody that has believes in certain kind of a religion is because their parents believed in that. You take the same person, and if they were born in a Buddhist family, they'll become Buddhist. If they were born in a Christian family, they'll become Christian. That's usually how it starts. And unless you actively look and seek for the truth and really understand the differences and understand the similarities, it really causes a lot of issues if they don't, because everybody loves religion as long as it's their religion and not somebody else's. So it's in that environment in Tehran, that was really the biggest thing, is that everybody wanted religion, but they wanted theirs and not anybody else's. So the government and all of that became very religious, and they changed all of the dynamics of the country. Before the revolution in Iran, women were judges, women were in government positions and all of that. Overnight, they had to wear a scarf. They have to wear loose clothing when they come into the streets. Everything changed. Everything changed overnight.
wow. And what was that like? I'm wondering, how did your parents meet? Is there a story behind that?
Yes. So my dad was in the U.S. Navy, and he was in Vietnam, and he was a naval intelligence officer. and he worked for the CIA later on. And so he is both docked in one of the southern Iranian cities on the Persian Gulf. And he came to Iran and he got out of the Navy, and that's where he met my mother. And my dad, when he left Iran when I was 7 years old and came to the U.S. And I didn't find him until 36 years later in Las Vegas. So that's in the book. So, so as at the time my dad left, right after we even came to the U.S. looking for him, we couldn't find him. Went back. Later, years later, I figured out he was a really high official in the CIA, and he passed away about a year and a half ago. And so, and he actually had a lot to do with how my life turned out without me even knowing it. He knew exactly where I was, what I was doing, and all of those things in the military and all of that. And I had no idea that he was in the background, kind of pulling the strings.
What do you mean? Like basically, like he had some, people reporting on your well-being, and
No, he was
someone
directing my
actually.
military missions.
Oh, wow. So did he influence you getting into the army without you indirectly?
Indirectly, yes. Without,
Wow.
yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's kind of like there's a movie out there called Blacklist where this guy keeps up with I actually didn't finish watching it, but it seemed like it was his daughter, and he just
Yes.
knew everywhere she went, and um yeah, that's amazing. But based on his mission, he had to leave. It sounds like what happened.
Yes. So he had to leave Iran. And years later, because I found out that he had actually had an Egyptian wife as well, and I have some half Egyptian brothers and sisters, and I have American African American brother and sister as well that I didn't know about. So so over the years, so on his dying bed, I spent about 3 weeks before he passed with him, trying to understand his story. And his thought process, he was a patriot, and all he cared about was his job and his country. And I asked him, I said, so all these women that you married and have kids, and what was the purpose? And he basically, his answer was, well, the best cover is when you have a family. That was his story. So I spent 3 weeks writing down all of the things that he could talk about with me and telling me his life story. So hopefully the next book is going to be the third book that I'm writing is going to be about his stories and his life story.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm intrigued. So did he actually? I'm sitting here thinking, did he actually get divorced, or was he had like multiple?
No, he just had different identities with different wives, and he never technically divorced my mother, and he until my mother actually divorced him in his absence. But he just that's was his lifestyle. He traveled all over the world and created families and left, pretty much.
Whoa, this is amazing because you watch these roles played out in movies,
Yeah,
and then you wonder like how do they keep straight the different characters or life that they're living, and I'm sitting here wondering how did he keep all of the details straight, like with you're with this person and you have this name and this personality with this person, like how do you not mix it up? But I guess once he left one wife, I guess he was out of their life, and so
right,
yeah,
exactly.
he
Yeah,
didn't
he
have to
was.
keep multiple stories going at the same time.
Yeah, because originally he comes from a German background and all of that. That's just the things I found out later. But he always claimed he was French, and then another time he claimed he was Norwegian, and had different passports, different names, different identities, and it sounds like a movie, but it's true.
That's amazing, though. And for you to learn and find him 30 something years later, what was it like for your mom? Like, did he just disappear, or did she know that he went back to the US?
He said he was his original story was he was going to come to the U.S. and buy a house and get everything settled and move us there. He left, and within 3 months we couldn't contact him anymore. After he left, there was no trace of him.
Wow. Are your siblings from Egypt, are they older or younger?
I don't know. I haven't met them, so they're all younger than me because my mom was the first one. So they're all younger than me, and I have no idea. I found one of them in Chicago area. She lives in Chicago area, but she doesn't want to talk to me. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to disrupt your life, but
Wow, that's so interesting. And the African American lady you said you think you have another sibling.
yes.
Is this on the US side? Have
It's
you
on
met
the U.S.
her?
side. Yeah, she lives in Florida actually, and I tried contacting her. She doesn't want to talk to me either. They all hate my dad so much they don't want to talk to me either. But it's
Oh,
and it's okay. I mean, it's after what I went through and all of that, you learn that people have their own demons and they have their own struggles and those things, and you have to be okay with that. And you kind of let them do their thing. And if they decide to come and contact me, that's great. And if they don't, that's their prerogative and that's their choice. And I don't hold anything against them for it. And I don't even hold anything against my father for it because he lived a different life as well. So who am I to judge anybody at this point?
right, right. I can imagine. He probably had his own internal struggles as well, right?
Right, exactly.
Knowing the reality of having multiple lives and all of that. So I can't even imagine his internal conversation.
Right,
Um,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
wow. But I'm happy you were able to connect with him later in life and get his story and spend some time with him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, wow. How is your mom? Is she with you on the US or is she back in Iran?
No, she actually never left Iran. She stayed there, and she still lives there. She still lives in Tehran, and she likes her life. She's 80 some odd years old, and she never wanted to leave Iran. She kind of comfortable. She didn't want to learn a new language and new culture and all of that stuff. So she's there. And my sister lives in Copenhagen in Denmark, and I still connect with her once in a while as well.
Okay, so you do have a sister with your dad from your
With my
dad's
dad and my mom,
relationship?
yes. Yeah.
Okay. Did she
Yeah.
ever remarry or she just never moved on with anybody else?
My mom did remarry. She did remarry, and that was tough growing up with my mom on that because and there's a whole series about that in the book as well on the circumstances there because he was at the beginning he was very pro-Islamic and pro-Islamic government and all of that, and living with me was not a easy thing, and living with him was not an easy thing either. So
Wow, I can imagine. Wow. Okay. So how did you how long were you with your father? Like your biological father? Like how long was he around with you when you were
until I
growing
was
up?
about 7, I was about 7 years
Okay.
old. Yeah.
But you knew enough that his where he was from, the culture made such an impression of on you that later on in life it impacted you so much that you said you joined the rebels and you were supporting a certain side. And I'm thinking at 7, how do you come about making such a decision when you get older?
Yeah, so I grew after my dad left. We actually came to the U.S. for about 9 months and lived here for about 9 months trying to find him. My mom wanted to basically give a last ditch effort to find him, and he was always one step away from us, and he was always one step ahead of us. Every time we think we had an address, we hired a PI to look for him. And every time the PI would find an address for him, he would have left the day before the PI got there. And so it's like he knew that we were looking for him. So that 9 months living in the U.S., and I was about 11 years old at that point, and 10 or 11 years old. And that 9 months in the U.S. had a big impression on me. And then we went back to Iran because my mom couldn't legally stay here because my dad never applied for a green card or anything, never registered their marriage or anything else. And my mom had the option of leaving us here by ourselves in a foster family or taking us with her. So she took us with her. And we went back to Iran with her on there. And I was always a child that was always reading and understanding and all of that. And my uncle, and this part is in the book as well, my uncle had a book repair shop that I always spend a lot of time in his bookstore reading about different things and different books and those types of things. So I really understood a lot more, and I had to grow up really, really fast in that process.
So give me a sense for like your journey into the military on the Iranian side and then on the US side, and like what influence was it knowing who your dad was at that young, being a teenager and finding out what your dad possibly do for a living, or was it somebody indirectly influencing you to go into the
Yeah,
military?
I had no idea what my dad did for a living until about 30 years later when I found him. So I had no idea what he did or where he was or how all of that kind of came together. But in Iran, it was about ideology and about losing freedoms and things like that really motivated me to fight. And then getting out of Iran and coming to the U.S., no language, no money, nowhere to sleep, nowhere, nothing to do. And then all of a sudden, Army recruiter shows up and he said, "Hey, you want 3 meals a day, good pay, a place to sleep?" I'm like, "Sign me up. I'm going." So that was the thing. And then when I went into the Army, I just couldn't go to. I always tried. I'm always an overachiever, so every time somebody showed up and said, "Hey, you want to sign up for this thing?" I'm like, "Sure, sign me up." I went to the next level. That's how I ended up in special operations.
Wow, wow, wow. Okay. Um, what was it like on the Iranian side then, compared to like being in the military in the US?
It was really different because when I got drafted into the Iranian army part of it, it was basically, here's a gun, here's how to shoot it, go to war. And
Mm.
it was like a 3-week training and go to war. And I was on the front lines during the Iran and Iraq war. And in the U.S. military, it was very different. You get lots of training, lots of right equipment. It was completely a different experience between the two. But when I got deployed to the first Gulf War, it was like I was fighting with Iraqis again, just from a different side under a different flag,
Hmm.
but the same enemy.
Right, right. Okay, okay. Right. Wow, wow. So I'm wondering, here's one thing that just popped in my mind about um can you educate the public or our listeners about the hostage situation that was going on during that time? I think we might see clips of it, but I don't think people really know the story. Can you give us a bit about like what went on with that?
Yeah, sure. So it goes back a little bit in history on that side. So I'm going to start a little bit farther back than the hostage situation of why it happened and how it happened. So in 1953, there was a democratically elected prime minister in Iran, and the Shah of Iran left the country, and the prime minister took over power in Iran. In 1953, and this is public record now, the U.S. government actually admits it. that the CIA and the American government, because the prime minister nationalized the oil, and so basically the Americans and the British were no longer getting the oil for free out of Iran. They staged a coup out of the American embassy and overthrew the democratically elected prime minister and brought the Shah back into power. And so, and everybody knew that it was a coup d'état that was staged by the Americans out of the American embassy. So after the revolution in Iran and all of that, the first place they went, because they thought that they're going to do it again, the first place they went was to the American embassy and trying to basically take over the American embassy so they can't start another coup d'etat against the Islamic government that just got into power at that time. Now, the thing is that it was a different government, a different strategy, all of that. But at that time, nobody cared. And they basically stormed the embassy, took all of the American hostages in there, and they were there for 444 days, hostages in there. And actually, last week was the anniversary of Operation Eagle Claw, which was the Americans that went into the deserts of Iran trying to rescue the hostages, and their planes collided with each other. And a lot of American servicemen died during that, because during that operation, it was a failed operation under the Carter administration, trying to rescue the hostages. And once Carter was out of power and Reagan came into power and became a president, they finally released those hostages. But the original thought process from the Iranians were, they staged the coup d'etat once before out of that embassy. We're going to do it again. They're going to do it again. So let's go take it over, basically. And that's how the hostilities started.
Right, right, right. Okay. Wow. So you mentioned that once you joined the U.S. military and you got into special ops, you were serving in Sierra Leone and West Africa and some other places. I've been to Freetown, so I felt the connection there with you. And not sure where else in Africa you've been, but West Africa is, has its intrigue and so forth. So much rain that I have ever seen in my
Yes.
life. I have never seen so much rain. I'm telling you, monsoon
Yes.
in the middle of summer. Like,
Yes.
what in the world? I was there for 10 weeks and I was like, okay, this is a lot of water.
Yeah.
Okay, so you traveled quite a bit as well, just like your
Yes.
dad, not even knowing. Isn't that
Not even
interesting?
known. Exactly. Yes. Yes. Not even knowing it. I did a lot of travel. But I would tell you that Africa is one of those places that I love, but it's one of the most dangerous, most beautiful, but the most dangerous places in the world at the same time.
Mm,
And I'm not talking about the animals and the things that go there. Humans are the most dangerous animals in the world, because I was in Rwanda during the genocide. And our job was to go rescue the missionaries out of the different villages and stuff in the middle of the jungles and all of that. And I can tell you that I have seen evil, and I have seen humans at their worst. And I have seen humans at their best in that situations as well, because there were some very dedicated people trying to help at the same time during the most awful time that you can even imagine. So, and there's a chapter about that in the book as well, about my experience there. And what you see is just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I've heard snippets, and I guess they came out with that movie, and it's horrifying, right?
It is.
Um,
It's completely horrifying. Yeah.
Very sad, very sad. But I'm, there's still ongoing conflicts in certain parts of the continent. But as far as I know, they were working through their issues between the two groups from back then. So I'm
Yes.
thinking that progress has, they're able to get along after such an atrocity, and hopefully we don't get back to that point again,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have high hopes for the human race that at some point we will learn how to get along with each other.
I hope so. Oh my goodness. During some of my research, interestingly, as we're talking about international travel and different cultures, different countries, I came across a quote that talks about ethnocentrism, which is basically when somebody feels like their culture from whatever country they're from is like the best in the world. They have such
Hmm.
strong cultural pride,
Yeah.
and somebody basically said that they believe ethnocentrism is kind of the underneath like racial tendencies, racial beliefs, and I could see that. And so I'm wondering, like what has been, and I don't want to get political or talking about racism
Mhm.
or anything like that, but like what are have been like some observations that you've had having gone from, spending some time in the US, being exposed to the Black community, building relationships with different people. Like are some observations that you can share with us?
Yeah, one thing I can say, I always refer to Nietzsche and his famous quote about patriotism is my country is the best because I was born in it. That's really what it is. So, and and you can take that from race, religion, any of those factors. It's usually the same thing. So when you look at it from that perspective, I think it's lack of understanding. A lot of times there's a lack of understanding of different cultures and that it's different. It's about the difference. That you don't look like me, you don't talk like me, you don't cook like me, you don't eat the same food as I do, and you're different. And I'm not used to that. So that difference cause uncomfortableness for people. And if they're not open minded and wanting to see things and understand things, they become, that's one aspect of it. And the other aspect of it is that there's people that really try to say because I am from this location or I'm this color or I have this religion, I'm superior to everybody else, and that is a driver for a lot of these different discussions and different ways of people approaching things. Looking at all of that, at the end of it, I think what we have to do, we have to look at the basics. We're all human. Everybody loves somebody. Doesn't matter who you are. You always have somebody that loves you, and there's somebody that you love, be it your mother, your sister, your father, your whoever it is. And the thing is, in order for us to get along with each other, we have to go down to the basics and understand that we all just want to live and be happy. And there's really not that much differences in us, except we just do things differently.
Right. And we do things differently because we're all born and raised in different parts of the world.
Right.
And if I've never been to your place, part of the world, how will I ever know how you do things over there? So of course I'm doing things on my part of the world based on just how I was born and raised and seen and observed people do things. So it's interesting that people think that we should think the way they do, but we've never been exposed to their world, their experiences, their culture, what was passed down from their families, but we're expected to have
Right.
like their same perspective, which is impossible because
Impossible. Right. Right.
if somebody has never been to the US or never even heard about the United States, they may never have any preconception about what life is like here. So how can you expect them to think like you when they've never heard it or been here, right?
Right.
So
Exactly. And I always say, I said, if you look at in the greater of the world, when you look at the universe and the stars and all of that, we're just a speck of dust living on a rock. We're just like when you look at an ant colony, we're pretty much the same as that ant colony. We all and we fight with each other because one person was born on this side of the rock versus the other side of the rock. It's all the same rock.
that is so true. That is so true. I'm intrigued to learn about your third culture person experience. Like, struggling to after leaving Tehran and moving to the U.S. How did you prove your connection to your dad and being able to be here in the U.S.? Did you? I don't know how if that's too personal to talk
No,
about.
no,
Or
no. It's okay. It's okay. So, U.S. law is that if you're born from American parent, you automatically a citizen in America. Actually, I was born on an American military hospital in Tehran at the time, so I was considered a natural born citizen uh, from that perspective. And when me and my sister both were born, my dad actually filed all the paperwork with the U.S. Embassy. He never did it for my mother, but he did file all the paperwork with the U.S. Embassy. So we were already a citizen. So had dual citizenship, basically. And then because Iran doesn't recognize dual citizenship, you have until age 18. At age 18, you have to pick one or the other. And you get to decide which citizenship you want to keep and which one you want to give up. Basically. But I never got there because I had to leave Iran and come to the U.S. way before that, and the government of Iran was looking for me, so I really didn't want to go do that. I had to get out of the country at the time.
wow, so so when you were mentioning that you were with the fighting with the rebels, you were younger than 18.
Yes, yes, I was. I started when I was 13 years old with them.
Wow. I'm 13. I have a nephew who's 13. Like how they train you for 3 weeks and
No, that was the military. That's a different thing.
that's later.
That's later in
Oh,
life. Yeah, that's later in life. But no, the rebels were anti-government. We were fighting against the Iranian government, and we were trying to overthrow the Islamic government of Iran. And once that happened, then we had to really. And then I got drafted into the Iranian military. They just picked me up off the street. I was 16. They picked me up off the street and threw me in a truck and say, "Here you go. You're going to the front."
wow. Wow, wow, wow. I am aware that in some countries, males are required to do some sort of service,
Yes.
right? All males. So I get that part of it. But tell me a bit about coming over to the US and then adjusting to life here. Outside of, your Detroit, was it Detroit? Your
That's
Detroit
right. Yes.
experience, like over the years, tell me more about your third culture person experience of just not fitting in. Like, what was that like for you?
It was, I consider myself usually a chameleon. I can fit in pretty well and I can adapt to my environment wherever I'm at pretty well. But at the same time, certain things of understanding certain behaviors, certain things, give you a good example. In Iran, you might see two guys walking down the street holding hands, and it's not a big deal. It's not because they're gay or anything like that. It's not sexual at all. It's because they're just really good friends and it's acceptable behavior. In the US, it's personal space. It's all about standing farther from somebody and all of that. So those types of things I had to learn really, really quick and understand how to behave and what behaviors are acceptable in the US and what behaviors are not acceptable in the US, and really understand the culture of the people, how people look at each other. And then being in a predominantly black neighborhood, with my first entrance, and then in the army was very different because it was really drilled into everybody that everybody wears green. There's no differences between black or white, and that was really drilled into it. But then there was those undertones that you would see in the behavior of the people that was very different. So for me, it was a learning experience from all aspects of it, be it a soldier with a Chinese background or a Black American or me or somebody. We all kind of became a melting pot of hodgepodge of things that kind of got thrown into each other, and we all had to kind of figure it out. I had this friend in the army, and he was from the back hills of Tennessee, that his first pair of shoes that he ever saw was the army boots that he got when he was recruited, and he's never seen a black person in his life before either, because he was from areas of Tennessee that black people don't go. So it was that experience in the military, I think, really was good for me, because I learned from all walks of life from United States, that from different levels, from different education levels, different cultures, different backgrounds, kind of all into a melting pot of things that we had to kind of get along with each other no matter where we came from. So I kind of learned that process in there.
It's interesting to hear you talk about. I was relating to something that you were just sharing about not learning the different ways of expressing oneself and holding hands. The holding hand part, because in Jamaica it's the same way. I went to high school in Jamaica, and it was very normal for girls to be playing or walking in school holding hands. In fact, I was
Right.
very touchy, affectionate when I first came to the US, but that was normal. There was no concept in my mind that me touching a girl's hand meant that there was some sort of homosexuality attached to that.
Right.
We were just, we're affectionate with each other because we're great friends and we love each other. But I learned very quickly that it meant something else when I went off to college, and I had to
Exactly.
learn.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
So it can be, yeah, it can be quite shocking that the cultural norms that exist here in the West, so different. I tell you, so different.
Yeah, and coming to Detroit in a predominantly black neighborhood, that people would call each other the N word, and it was okay if you were black, and if you were not black, you couldn't say it, and it was. I had to learn that the hard way as well, and I thought it's a term of endearment, because I didn't speak very good English either, and I thought it was a term of endearment. I really had no idea what it meant, and I told that to somebody, and he looked at me and said, "Okay, I give you a pass right now, because I know you don't understand what the hell you just said, but let me explain to you how this works." So I had to get an education in that process of what it meant and how it works. And then I realized there's some dynamics on the skin color between people, that there's some things can be said and can't be said. And that was the time of the rap music, and all of that stuff was just coming out. And so I had to really adjust my thought processes of, okay, there's different subcultures here that you have to understand, and how they interact with each other is different.
Oh, it's exhausting.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, the little nuances that you have to learn. It is so exhausting. Because I had to learn that too, because the N word was not something I grew up hearing.
Right.
And then the additional level of seeing people who look the same referring to each other with the same word, that for me, I'm thinking it's offensive based on the rest of the population, but then I see you saying the same. It was so confusing for me. But boy, I mean, as a third culture person or immigrant to the US, even though you were an American, oh Lord, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
I'm sorry, I just pressed a different tab. Even though you are an American citizen, but you're still new to the culture, so you had to learn so much for the second time, but more on an extended basis since you were here more permanently. Um, yeah, it changes you, right?
Right.
It broadens your perspective, broadens your mind. But I think when you're going through it, I didn't realize that culture shock affected me to the level that it did, because I was living in the Washington, D.C. area where there were so many different people. And then I just felt like I was constantly being barraged with learning a new culture all the time. I just never settled down into just one thing. It would
Right.
constantly change.
Yes.
It was tiring for me.
Yeah, and being in that perspective, I think over time I developed my own culture of how I fit in with different groups of people and different things, because you don't belong to any of them, so you just have to figure out how to fit in with them when you're in their company and you're trying to work, you're trying to have fun, whatever. You just learn how to kind of become one of them.
It's true. It's true. I can start up a conversation with anybody. And I think sometimes people who look like me might think, oh, because we're native here, we're not so trusting
Right,
because there's been a history of other things that kind of complicate the relationship,
right,
right? But for me, I don't really step off with that at the forefront of my mind. Like today, literally at work, I there was a Caucasian or European American, whatever term, white gentleman, and he was sitting with headphones in his ear. I didn't know him. I literally walked up and just started a conversation with him, and he was the nicest, friendliest. He taught me so much about a situation that was going on at work, and I was like, "Oh, I'm so glad that I just approached him." And before you know it, it was like four of us standing there having conversation about situations at work. But I'm just kind of happy that I don't have that type of how do you, is it fear or is it caution? I don't even know.
I
I mean,
think
I'm
it's
as
caution.
long
I think it's more caution, and people have a tendency of not wanting to be in uncomfortable situations, so they don't put themselves out there. That's the other piece, because they expect a certain behavior just based on somebody's looks, and that stereotype kind of goes across colors, across different identities, different cultures, and different things. Is that I don't know them, so I don't want to say something stupid, so I'm not going to go approach. That's one thing. Or this guy looks like that he's going to be really mean to me if I talk to him, so I'm not going to approach him and I'm just going to stay in my lane, type of a thing. But being from a different culture and coming, and because everybody's outside of your culture, you kind of built that immunity that I'm going to go talk to him and just see what happens.
it's yeah, it's probably through experience, and I've had to probably because growing up on a small island with majority Black or majority Afro descendants, I didn't have that type of fear. But I think when you come into the U.S., because there's so many different people, I was constantly forced to
Right,
form a relationship with different people. So perhaps I've overcome, and sometimes I do deal with like the fear of feeling that if I approach a certain person who looks a certain way, I might get a certain reception because it has happened. Don't get me
right.
wrong, it has happened. But today was like an example of perhaps I've just trained my mind to just have a conversation with people, and it turned out to be beautiful. And so sometimes we just have to take that chance.
Yeah.
I know people have had experiences and terrible experiences, and I'm not negating that at all. So, but wow, this is interesting because I'm looking at you and I'm like, wow. But how do you fare when you are in people who just phenotypically look like you? Do you feel different or do you feel like you're blending in?
I feel like I'm blending in. And the interesting part is they don't have to look like me for me to feel like I'm part of them. So I have a lot of friends from different ethnicity backgrounds and things like that, Japanese, Chinese. Even I travel internationally a lot. So I go to Asia a lot. I go to Europe a lot. And I just kind of feel like I'm one of them. I just kind of fit in, and I don't see any difference between myself and them. So I was in South Korea last year, and I just go and eat their food and sit there and talk to them. And I always go look for not the touristy areas. I always look for the little small hole in the wall places that locals go to. And I go and sit down and have conversations with them. Sometimes they won't even understand what we're talking about, but we figure out an international language of sign language that we kind of communicate with each other. But nowadays, most people all over the world speak English, so it's much easier now. But even if they don't, figure out a way to communicate with them.
Right, right. And you enjoy the beauty of different cultures. And so for me, when I go to a new country as well, I'm totally immersed in it. And I come away, oh my gosh, they have this here. There's this that they have that we also have. Or do you know that they have this thing in this country that I didn't even know? Like you explore and discover something new. So
Right,
it's really
exactly.
cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, Shadows of Tehran by Nick Berg, guys, check it out. What an intriguing story. Give a perhaps there's some other. I would love to give you the floor now to tell people why they need to buy this book or why they need to pick it up. You've shared a lot about your personal journey, but why should they go out and buy Shadows of Tehran?
So, Shadows of Tehran, as I put it in the preface of the book and the dedication of the book, it's a story about a lot of people's sacrifices. It's about resilience. It's about adapting to different environments and different cultures. And I always follow what Churchill once said is when you're going through hell, keep going. You don't want to stay there. And that has been the mantra of my life. And the story is about hope. It's about that nothing bad will ever last forever. And if you keep going and keep driving, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and you'll reach that light, no matter how bad things get. The story is not an easy read based on the reviews that everybody have gotten. It's not an easy read. There's some dark spaces inside in this book, and there's some things that people have told me that when they read the book, they actually cried in certain sections of it. But it's based on a true story, and it's based on the memories of people that have fought for good, and there is hope in this world, and we all will get there someday. But don't give up. Don't ever give up.
Beautiful, beautiful. You mentioned that this is your second book, I believe. What's the name of your first
Well,
book?
the first book is actually, I tell everybody, please don't read it. Don't look at it. It's a garbage. I wouldn't even read it either. So, and that's the other thing about these books is that if you don't try, if you don't fail, you're never going to get good at it. Show me somebody that has never failed, and I'll show you somebody that never tried. And the story is this book. I have learned all of the not to dos from the other books, the other two books that I've written, and this one is much better than the other two books. This time I figured out what the writing process is going to be like, how to really write a story. This is the first novel. The other two books were more technical books, but this one is very different. There's a lot of emotion in this book. There's a lot of story in this book that talks about how humans can adapt to those most harshest environments and how you can still succeed even in those environments.
Amazing, and especially because of your personal journey of your dad and him leaving and finding him 30 something years ago. I'm sure. I wonder what that was like for you. Like what kept you going? Did you feel abandoned? I don't know, like
Of
what was
course,
that experience like?
of course, there was abandonment feelings all along and all of that. And it was always the question of why. Was it because of me that he left, or was it because of some other reason that he left? And you always, as a child, especially, you ask these questions of yourself. But as I learned over time that there is different types of things that happen in people's lives that it's really out of their control. And every parent is this their first time they're doing it. And they're not going to be perfect. If we expect our parents to be perfect, they're not. They're just like us. They're not perfect in any aspect of this. So it's really understanding more than anything else. And then realizing over time that they had to make some tough decisions in their lives too. And those tough decisions based on the circumstances that was pushed on them.
Yes, and you possibly a book about your dad coming up.
Yes, that's going to be the third book. So this first book finishes when Ricardo, the character, gets out of the military. That's where it stops. And I'm going to finish Ricardo's story in the second book. And then the third book will be kind of like a prequel. That's going to be about my dad and his story of how it impacted Ricardo's life and how his experience has impacted Ricardo's life.
Wow. It's quite intriguing. It makes me want to actually, now having heard your story, like I'm so intrigued by the story of your dad and his own human experience going through a journey like he did, having to play the roles that he did. You know what I mean? Like the love and having to leave and loving again and having to leave. Um, I can't even conceive like what was his heart like or his mental capacity to do something like that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But this has been very intriguing, Mr. Berg. I am glad that we pressed through and got it done.
I appreciate it, Simone. Thank you. Really, really appreciate it.
It has been a joy getting to know you, and we will stay in touch. I'll pass a message to um, your publicist that we've achieved it and this is over.
Okay.
We will get the editing done and we'll get you updated about like social media promotions and once this is ready to be aired. Okay.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you, Simone. Have a great
And for
afternoon.
Thank you so much. And for all of our guests who may be watching either on YouTube, LinkedIn, or TikTok, thank you for joining. We're in session. I'm not able to see you, but thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for this very intriguing story. Join us next time for another story of the immigrant experience. Take care now.
Bye.
We thank our listeners around the world and we appreciate your continued support as we build our human library. Please remember to give us a 5-star review, subscribe, and share with your friends, family, and circle of influence.